Good morning. So thankful to be with all of you this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your busy week, or as you begin a busy week, to gather together and worship the Lord. It matters. As you've heard by now, you know I enjoy starting my sermons with a question. But before I get to that question, let me pause and ask, can you hear me today? Is it better? Okay. If at any point you cannot hear me, just be very obvious. Go like this. Your associate pastor will figure out how to preach in our beautiful space. Trust me. So here is my question for you this morning. Have you ever been compelled by love? Have you ever felt compelled by love? So I'll describe it to you if you're not sure what that means. My little list is 3. He loves going for walks. He doesn't love how high the curbs are in Galveston, Texas. He doesn't like having to go like this when he steps up the curb. Do you know what I'm talking about on the Strand? Yeah. So he will ask me if I can hold him. Mama, uppies. I will lift him up and I will remind him, my precious child, you are 35 pounds. Please do not flail around like an inflatable tube man. Please hold Mama's neck so that I can lift you up the stairs. And when he holds onto my neck, his cheek brushes mine, and I smell his beautiful toddler smell, which is sometimes sweat and macaroni and cheese. Other times is freshly washed baby. And I just feel my heart glowing. Have you felt that feeling before? You're so full of love for this person or animal in your life, you can't help it. And I, no matter where we're going, just have to kiss his cheek. Just a little, just because I'm so full of love for him. If you think about life, aren't all the best moments in life those moments when we are compelled by love? Those moments when our hearts are so full, we can't help but express that love in our hearts through action. If you think about it, when in your life have you been compelled by love? Have you ever wondered or thought about God being compelled by love for you? Because God is. God is compelled by love to act for you as well. Have you ever been able to not resist doing something out of love? Every morning, without fail, I make my husband a cup of tea. Is it super bitter and dark and cold by the time he gets to drink it? Absolutely. But I'm compelled by love to do this. When our hearts are full and glowing, how do we not act? Not because we have to, but because we want to. Because when you love, you can't help but act out of love. So now we get to ask ourselves, what does this look like for God? What does it look like when God's heart is so full of love for you that God can't resist acting? Have you ever thought about that? I assure you, if you start to look, you may realize it happens more often than not. For example, I love witnessing things start to grow. I had nothing to do with the little purple flowers in our yard. But whenever I see them, it's as though God's finger is on my shoulder, reminding me. I had nothing to do with the incredible meal we ate at Shrimp and Stuff, but it felt again like God's finger on my shoulder. We have nothing to do sometimes with these beautiful acts of love in our life, and we don't have to act, but sometimes we just can't help ourselves. So how might God be compelled to act for you? In our gospel story today, we have such a rich story to explore. We have the story of Peter and his mother-in-law. And I'm going to take some liberties as I retell the story, so just keep that in mind. But as we enter into the story, I want you to picture the most average home, the most average everyday house. Maybe the lawn outside needs clipping. Maybe the siding is slightly askew. Maybe there's a chicken running by, a cat sleeping on the windowsill. And it's into this house that Jesus goes to perform this incredible miracle. We know that just a few verses before this, Peter and his brother were out on a boat, and they were fishing. And then a little while after that, they're in the synagogue, and Jesus is healing the masses. And it's there that they receive word that Peter's mother-in-law is ill. And again, I'm taking a liberty here, but I like to imagine, you know that feeling when your heart is full of love, but it hurts, but it aches, because you say, what can I do? How can I help? She is sick. What can we do to help her? I like to imagine that maybe this fever had been going around the village, and they felt that fear, that cold stone that we get in our stomachs when we hear someone we love has a diagnosis. And they say, what can we do? With this overflowing heart, Peter instantly goes to Jesus, and he says, my mother-in-law is sick, and Jesus immediately goes to her house. Now I want you to picture the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the great ruler of the cosmos, entering in to that little house that we described. He walks in the door, she's laid out in her bed, her brow is sweaty, she's gasping for breath. And our God, here's where I want us to pause. Our God, in so many other stories, heals with just a or without even looking at the person he's going to heal. He heals folks that aren't even in the same room that he is in. He heals a woman who just touches the hem of his robe. But in this case, what does Jesus do? He doesn't have to, but he reaches out his hand and he pulls her up. He didn't have to do that. Could we say that he was compelled by love? Was his heart glowing for this woman who he was encountering for the first time that day? He reaches her by the hand and pulls her up. And in the ancient language, here is this amazing thing. As we read, he is pulling her up. The ancient words hearken to a sense of resurrection. He is resurrecting her, even though she has not yet died, but she has been healed to the point where she comes back to life because of his love. If you think about the times in your life when you've received that fierce, deep love, doesn't it sometimes feel like resurrection? Like being reborn, being brought back to life by love. And it often happens in the most normal, mundane, average, everyday places. Don't expect it to always happen at the mountaintop. It happens anywhere that we are. How many times has love resurrected you? I think about growing up and the times I'd have a horrible day, and I'd get home, and Mother would have made my favorite dish. How did she know? And the first bite of food tasted like I was remembering who I am, whose I am, and I came back to life. In my family, we have a saying, if you're having a bad day, lay down, a cat will find you, it will sit on your chest, and it will purr. And that purr will bring you back to life. I believe it's true. Isn't the same true when we open our door and that wiggly little puppy is so excited to see us? It's like, yes, I'm alive. I am raised back to life by the love of everyone around me. And now may you hear God saying, this is me raising you to life again. And now that we have been loved, we have to have that old song. Now that we've found love, what are we going to do with it? Now that we've found love, what are we going to do? How will we let that love shine from our hearts today? Or if you're not there, that's okay. How will you let love raise you this day? Because resurrection meets us in relationship. So what will we do with this love? May we love in return. Even if it's risky or imperfect or we don't do it right that we feel, or it's so normal, know that it's not actually normal at all. It's what raises us. It's who raises us. And when we set our eyes on him, I believe the glow of his heart will show us the way. There's a blessing that I love, and I'd like to leave it with you, by a reverend named William Sloane Coffin. And it goes like this. May God give you the grace to never sell yourself short. Grace to risk something big for something good. And grace to remember that the world is now too dangerous for anything but truth, and too small for anything but love. Love as best you can, where you can, and God will reach out God's hand to raise you again and again. Amen.